firstly, I'm interested to know, what was your entry point into this scene? Was there any band in particular that you were like, oh man, I wanna do this?
Yeah, my personal heroes were Linkin Park as a teenager. So they're not really part of the scene. I think they outgrew the scene, but that was definitely an inspiration to me for sure.
And then when was the first time you ever felt represented as a woman? Was there any like female musician or band that you saw where you were like, oh my God, we can do this too? That's so crazy.
I'd say when I was younger, like no doubt, Gwen Stefani, that was an inspiration, especially someone who was quite mainstream in the pop world, but obviously had these alternative influences, was kind of genre breaking, and seemed to just so powerfully be showing up as her true self. Like that just came across so strongly to me. And I was quite an elitist as a 12, 13, 14-year-old. I only listened to the rock genre, but I remember being surprised by how much I resonated with Pink when she came on the scene. Pink as a pop musician, I was like, oh, like you're really cool. You're bringing the edge. So I would say in that space, those artists, and then in the more rock space, I, along with everyone else in my age, was absolutely smitten by Evanescence when they came on the scene, right? So and I still reference how those bands made me feel as I create music now. I still remember what an impact that made on me, and that inspires me to want to keep creating and keep throwing my art into the ring to see if it can impact anyone in the same way.
No, I agree, especially what you said with Gwen Stefani. God, I look back at her and I'm like, holy shit. All of my personality and how I dress is like so heavily based on her, and a lot of new metal artists as well. But my God, she did everything. She did everything. That woman was incredible.
And I love that she's still going. Same thing with J-Lo. Like I'm not into J-Lo's music, but still like I'm so freaking inspired by her as a human being to completely just surpass boundaries. And by just continuing to exist in the industry, that is her contribution, which is sad that's what the bar is, but it's so powerful. Just keep showing up, and that is inspiring.
You mentioned that word powerful, and I'd really be interested to know, because there's a lot of talk about powerful women and what it constitutes, what being a powerful woman is. In 2021, what is being a powerful woman to you?
It's cool that you mentioned that. It seems very like vibey and strange that you bring that up, because my like mantra right now is I show up powerfully in my life. And I don't mean that I show up powerfully in the way I engage with other people. I mean in my everyday world. So like at night when I am tired, when I just want to zone out and like eat chips and drink wine and watch shows, I say that to myself to help myself remember the way that I want to live my life, the way that I want to be present, the way that I want to feel a sense of power in my own life. And I do, it starts at home. It starts internally, right? It starts in the way that we show up for ourselves, the way that we talk to ourselves when we are getting ready in the morning, self-talk, all that. That, if you show up powerfully in that, I hope that then that can translate to showing up powerfully in the way you relate to the world. But that's secondary. Like that doesn't really matter as much as the relationship you have with yourself, and if that is feeling like good and juicy.
But you mentioned like pep talk and talking yourself up. What would it look like for you to give yourself a pep talk? Like how would you say, okay, I need to do this, I'm a powerful woman?
I journal a lot. I don't like to come at myself in a pretty like hardcore like bulldog kind of way. I'm not my own coach at the gym. I'm not like, do it, girl. I'm much more like, oh, sweetie, what do you need? How can I help you? I try to take this very gentle approach and kind of coax out whatever insecurities or whatever resistance I have, and do it that way. So I have different kind of vibes. It's like ebb and flow for me. Sometimes it does work for me to kind of pound myself and be like, let's go, hype music. I'm going to kick ass at life. But then the next week I'll have to just be very gentle with myself. So I'm learning to read those rhythms a little bit, which is quite helpful.
Jumping into your music, you released a new album, and I feel like with all your music, you're really open and emotional, and that's what I love so much about you as a musician and just everything you've created. But I find, whenever women are emotional in music, it's always trivialized, like, oh, you're an emotional bitch, oh, she's just a bitch, even though men can be as misogynistic as they want in music, and it's like totally fine. How do you navigate through that as a lyricist, thinking, oh, can I write about this breakup, or can I write about this thing that upset me, or are people going to think that I'm an emotional bitch?
I just haven't cared very much if that is what people are thinking. It hasn't slowed me down. I write about mental health. That's what matters to me. That's what has shaped my world as a human. That's the lens through which I show up in the world. And if that isn't it, I mean, it's like my whole life. I just do my thing that I introduce, stay in my lane, and don't get too caught up on if people are resonating with it or connecting with it or not. And I'm lucky enough that I've been at it for long enough that now I have enough fans, audience, listeners in the world that I am able to do this and just make them happy and not care about if new people get it or not. It's been really helpful to me to not really reference other people's feedback too much, just kind of keep recentering with what I believe and how I want to show up.
Mm. And it's interesting because you just mentioned women's health and women's mental health, and I feel like women are often seen as these powerful statues, like we can do anything, but like we can't. Like women can't, non-binary people can't. We can't. Why is it important for you as a woman to have a space to talk about your emotions and talk about mental health and have that outlet when women are already so penalized in society?
I love that you're speaking on that. We don't admit our limitations often enough. I don't admit them to myself. So it just matters to put that on people's radar. It matters to be vulnerable and open. It is so, like, just how I was inspired seeing Gwen Stefani living her truth, just through her fashion, just through the way she represented herself, right? I want to unlock the doors so that way in 5 or 10 years that it's easier for women to show up and be as emotional and vulnerable and real and unedited as they can be, and sing about whatever they want. You don't have to sing about mental health like I do. This is my thing. Like, I'm not trying to lead by example as in do what I do. I'm trying to lead by example as in like do as I do, which is I'm showing up as myself. Please also show up as yourself, even if your way is totally different from my way. Let's not get hung up on that. It's just about freaking connecting with your true self and then making it easy for other people to connect with that too, if you're their thing, if it jives. And you don't have to match with everyone. You know, I remind myself that all the time. It doesn't matter if only 0.1% of the population gets what I do. That's cool. And that's a win.
A lot of people get you, and so many women, young women, really resonate with your music. And you spoke about how, you know, if you could make it easier for women to just sing about what they want, that would be great. I think when we look back at when you started, which was like the early 2010s, in the like metalcore pop punk era that was rife with misogyny and toxic masculinity, and we've all grown since then. But when you reflect on when you started versus now, and your place in the music industry as a woman, how do you think it's changed?
For what I've seen, most that has changed is we're evolving to where women are less of a novelty and more earning their place just because we're human. You know, it used to be such that promoters would put all the chicks together on the bill. And so us as the chick band, we would either be the headliner or the opener for 4 other chick bands. And that's the way that it went. That often drew a certain crowd that only listened to female fronted music. And a lot of fans would come up and be like, oh, I loved A, B, and C band, so I knew I would love you guys as D band. And I'm like, that's great. But like, also, can we just categorize us based on our genre, not our gender? Right. And now that's obvious. Now we've all had that conversation for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But at the time, that was such a continual sticking point, as was the Paramore comparisons. That was just nonstop. And I mean, whatever, like if that's the biggest thing I ran into, that's not that bad. But it was not just my band. Any band with a chick with colored hair remotely in that genre was a Paramore wannabe. And when you complain about that, you sound like you're being whiny. You sound like you're being like, oh, they just don't get me. I'm different. You know, that's not it though. We need to show women that you can show up in this space and not be compared to the woman who came right before you, that you can stand on your own and not have it be about the fact that you're a woman. And people weren't giving us permission to show up that way at that time.
That's such a good point because, you know, I love Hayley Williams, she's amazing, but I think about like if you did that with any other male vocalist, oh yeah, like Danny Worsnoff of Ask Alexandria is like the Ollie Sykes of Bring Me the Horizon. Like there's no correlation. I remember Courtney LaPlante, when she was in I Wrestled a Bear once, people said that she was Paramore, but if Paramore screamed, and it was like, no, she's not Paramore, she's just Courtney, that's it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. And it has evolved now where people don't just, lump the female fronted bands together. And as fans don't just, I think they've learned through conversations like this, through talking to their favorite artists, through, chats and Skype and Zoom stuff, learning that a lot of female fronted bands don't think it's a service being done to them to only be listened to by dudes who think chicks are hot in metal, for example. But I get that if you're a chick, you want to fall in love with music where you are represented. Of course, I see that. But where it becomes problematic, I think, is where it stops at the gender. Like that's, I've said that 10 times at this point in this interview. That's the core issue to me.
No, I get that. I think it's, you can highlight the fact that there are women in bands who are killing it, but if it's just that, if you're not organically representing them in spaces like, hey, here's just a list of bands that are cool, then it's just another form of segregating people into different categories, and it's problematic in and of itself. And the same's happening right now with like people of color in bands and like queer people in bands. Like we just get put in these lists, and it's like cool, but I'm actually just like a normal person as well. That's fun. But no, yeah, I feel that. I really feel that.
As you're bringing this up too, it makes me think of just like the algorithm in general and how that creates these links for people as well. A lot of times people will be like, I discovered your band through watching this band's video. And it's always another female friend or band. No one discovers our band through watching Bring Me the Horizon videos, although we are heavily influenced by Bring Me the Horizon. No one finds us through Linkin Park videos. It's always like Evanescence, Flyleaf, Paramore, wonderful bands. This is not me knocking them. Of course, I love them. I'm so grateful for the amazing art they've created. But I'm excited for 10, 15 years from now for that not to be the end of it,
Yeah. And then as well, when we look back at that time of like the metalcore pop punk era of 2010 to 2014, when everybody was drinking Monster and doing Warped Tour, I think, that wonderful time of MySpace. When we look back at that time, it was fun, but there was a lot of problematic things. I think as adults, we all look back and realize, we could have done better. So speaking from someone who was like in the midst of that, how can we protect and create safe spaces for women? This is me asking you to do like solve all the world's problems, but how do you think that we can create a safe space for women at shows and generally in alternative culture?
Well, culture is changing. So before, where it was completely normal and funny for dudes to be like, show your tits and scream that from the stage up at, the woman on stage, or scream that from the crowd up to the woman on stage. Now, I don't think that would be okay. I think people would, definitely have a problem with that, versus before that was something that women just had to like roll their eyes at or even laugh at because you're so uncomfortable by it because you're in front of thousands of people. So you just have to like move on. I think the fact that culturally things are changing, like that's the answer. That's happening because of conversations like this. I think it happens through people like women who, if you feel marginalized or if you feel like if you feel like this is happening to you, you should speak up. You should share. You should pinpoint, this is a problem. This is what it feels like from this side. Because when you're on the outside, you don't see it, And so if we can share our stories, and that's like so great what you're doing, you're making it easy for us to share our stories and to amplify our voices. So thank you for that. I guess that's where I would think it would start conversation.
You really hit the nail on the head. Conversations is where it starts, because I think some people, like, it's unconscious bias sometimes. People don't realize that the only music they consume is male orientated because they're a dude and they're just like, oh, cool, I like dudes who sing about this stuff that I relate to as a dude. But they could also listen to Paramore. Paramore is universally, like, it slaps for everybody. Conversations, because sometimes it's the same with, like, we have a lot of conversations about racism because I'm, like, half South Asian. We have a lot of conversations about racism and alternative culture, and I just think people don't realise because they have unconscious privilege. So I'd say it's just having those conversations to begin with and saying, actually, as a woman, I feel this, or as a queer person, I feel this, or as a person of color, I feel this. And then instead of rebuttaling, listening to them, because that's music's problem at the moment. People just don't want to hear. They're like, well, I don't agree because I've never experienced that. But that's not how it works.
I actually haven't experienced it. Let me tell you why you haven't experienced it and why I have. Like on that note, that reminds me that I feel like some of the best work in this space in my world, like in my immediate circle, has been done on tour, on the bus, talking to my crew. And when I hear them saying something that's bullshit, or for example, when the Me Too stuff was going down a couple of years ago, and a lot of dudes I would tour with would be like, man, you can't do anything these days. I'd be like, excuse me, sit down. Like, we're going to fucking talk this through. There was a lot of ignorance from crew members who were frustrated. I'm not trying to call anyone out. Crew members who were frustrated about how the industry was changing, and they were complaining about it. So there is an opportunity if we can change the touring industry culture, because a lot of times as a woman, I'm seeing that sexism coming from the sound person, the promoter, people in the industry, the touring crew for the other band or whatever. So there is, some small work that I can be doing in the world, and my other female coworkers can be doing in this space, just talking to our little touring crew.
No, it's a conversation I've been having as well with like everything going on with Blackout Tuesday that we had last year, and just the ongoing conversations about racism in the scene, that is very relevant to women's issues and queer issues in the scene. It's diversifying, because the more women you put in higher positions, the more that they can stop it at higher positions. That's why abuse still happens from the top and people still get exposed, because you can have women on stages, but if there aren't people behind the stages championing them who understand their pain, you're still going to have men who just abuse them.
Yes. Okay. So yes, there are two individuals right now who my management has come back and said, hey, you would be a perfect fit for this festival, but this promoter came back and said that they already have a chick band on that stage, so there's not room for you. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, this was in 2020, but like, real same thing. There was a radio station that plays enough girls, so they will not play us because they have their girls. And I'm like, you can't stop. You can't like be like 20% girls, check, and we're done. Like, I want to tweet these names out and call them out so bad, but I need them to support my band. So I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think a lot of female musicians have been stuck in this for a while because there haven't been women behind the scenes championing them, going, actually, because I know, like, I'll stop people when they're racist or when they're homophobic and be like, actually, don't do that, because, like, I know what it's like to experience that. So if you do that, I'm not going to work for you again. There needs to be more, like, crew members, photographers, people running festivals saying, actually, why can't we have more women? Why do we need a token band for this stage? Like, we can have 2 women. No one's going to die. There's like 5 men on one stage. We'll live. Like, it does come with that, because I think what people don't realize is you've probably been on stage all this time and had men behind the scenes making your life hell.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I have been luckier than most in that my husband is my bandmate. And so a lot of, I mean, it's tricky. A lot of times I feel like there's that extra layer where sometimes people come to him and I don't have to hear some of the bullshit. But then other times I feel like if I want something to change, I tell him to tell everyone so that I don't come across as the bitchy one, you know? And it's unfortunate, but people, I think, are scared of powerful women running their band like a business, like a company. I know what I want. I know what I'm going after in life. And people are used to hearing that from a male more than from a female.
While we're on this conversation, and this is something I was interested to ask you, but it's a hard question, and I'm sure you have a upsetting answer. Do you ever feel like there have been men in the industry who have stopped you progressing further? And I'm sure you've had this before. Have you ever thought, if I was a dude, I would be a lot bigger?
Whenever I'm tempted to think that, I think about the opportunities that we got in the beginning because I was a female. We got attention because we had a female. That was a novelty. It was a selling point in the beginning. It got us off the ground. And I saw some of my friends who started at the same time as me, who were dudes, who weren't able to cut through the noise. So what do you do with that? I don't know. So whenever I think that, I wonder, like, here's the thing. I look around at my genre and I see bands like Stitched Apart, Butcher Babies, New Year's Day, In This Moment. I think is quite, mainstream at this point. But these are bands that have been doing it for over 10 years. And in interviews, people are like, why do you think female music is like getting like so much good clout right now? Like all these girl bands are blowing up. I'm like, dude, it's because we've been around for over a fucking decade, and it shouldn't take us a decade to break through. It shouldn't take us like gritting our teeth for like half our lifetime to finally cut through the noise. That is a problem, right? It's a problem that a lot of chick bands, female-fronted bands, only can hang with it for 2 or 3, 4 years and then have to call it quits because they're probably walking a harder path than their male comrades.
It's crazy though. You've just blown my mind a bit. I've just thought of that. Most of the women I know in the industry that I work with have been here for 10 years.
Been around forever. You know what? We're not going anywhere because we would have already quit if we were going to be weeded out by now. So you're gonna see our faces till we're like 75. We are going to be in your face. Like I truly believe that. And I look at my coworkers in this industry. I have so much respect for them because I know what it takes to have been around for this long. It takes a lot of freaking resilience, and we've got that resilience for sure.
To end this interview, I wanted to ask if you had any specific female inclusive bands, like bands with female members, whether they're drumming or they're vocalist or whatever, that you wanted to shout out and champion, whether they're big, small, anybody in the industry that you like, you know what, I fucking love these people and we need to give more love to them.
That's so great. A couple that come to mind are Courage, My Love. They're fucking awesome. Yes, right? We've toured with them. Another band is Fit for Rivals with my girl, Renee Phoenix. Freaking
Yeah.
awesome. Crashing Atlas. There it is.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Crashing
Okay.
Atlas. They are pretty new. They just released a music video for their song Graveyard. There it is. Graveyard. It's super cool. So everyone go check that out. Give them some love on their YouTube video.
Awesome.
And I want to say this to any females watching who want to make a difference. I feel that part of my contribution is showing up in my space. And so even if you want to be in the music industry or not, no matter where you are, like you just by you powerfully showing up, there's the word powerfully again, just by you being who you are, standing your ground in your space, that is a message loud and clear. Even if, like, of course, do the work, like be active, do all the cool stuff, but just your presence is a message. And that is a powerful thing to send.
I think just even seeing other women at shows is such a powerful thing because you're like, holy shit, there's other people? What? This is crazy.
You know, it's the best. It's just like lights that fire, you know. That's how our fires get lit, is by seeing other women with their powerful fires like burning. And we're like, I've got that too. I'm going to do that too, no matter what that is.